Welcome back to another episode of the Tech Talks Daily podcast, where every day we explore the intersection of technology and business and try to understand the impact of it on our lives. So I'm your host, Neil C. Hughes, and today I have a truly remarkable guest. Her name is Nicole, and she's a stalwart in the retail media sector. And Nicole is currently with Criteo and has a storied history of innovation and leadership in this burgeoning industry. She's got some great stories, including launching HookLogic sponsored products to a European market nearly a decade ago, signing a transformative brands, and subsequently HookLogic was acquired by Criteo for a whopping $250 million. But more recently, she's managed some of the largest retailer relationships across Europe, including household names over here in the UK, from Sainsbury's to Asda, and the list goes on and on. But today we're going to dive deep into the fast-evolving world of retail media. I want to demystify what is retail media, a segment that's currently buzzing in the advertising industry for its promising of leveraging first-party retailer data to intimately connect with audiences with products. And at a time where we're talking about retiring third-party cookies, I want to learn more about the importance of first-party retailer data and the value that brings to retailers. But before diving in to the rosy prospects of retail media, I think it's imperative to scrutinise the complexities and challenges. For instance, how do you build a media network with adequate scale to meet advertisers' demands? What does it take to articulate a compelling media proposition to agencies? And what about that issue of fragmentation? How can retail media seamlessly integrate with the broader advertising ecosystem? Well, the good news is Nicole's unique perspective, coupled with her hands-on experience, means she is perfect to answer all these questions, demystify the buzzwords, and much more. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to London, where Nicole is waiting to speak with us today. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Yes, I'm Nicole Kivel. I'm the managing director at Criteo. So Criteo is the global leader in commerce media, which is becoming an increasingly hot topic at the moment. I oversee all of our sales and account management teams, working with some of the UK's biggest retailers such as Asda, Currys, ASOS, and overseeing all of our agency and advertiser relationships as well.
Well, every day on this tech podcast, I try and demystify a particular industry, the impacts of technology and any trends in that area. So there's so many reasons I'm excited to get you on the podcast today. And to set the scene for our conversation, in your view, how can emerging retailers overcome the challenge of scale, especially when attracting meaningful advertising partners, and maybe share a few learnings from Gap's decision to close its retail media unit over here? What are you seeing?
Yeah, so that's a great question because, the growth that retail media has seen is incredibly compelling. Every retailer out there wants to get in on the game. They want to be able to see what type of revenue they can drive and how that can increase their profitability. But there's a lot of key questions they need to ask themselves in terms of, do we have that scale to deliver on it? And if we don't, well, how do we get that scale? And embarking on a retail media journey for a retailer can be incredibly profitable, but it can also be incredibly costly. There's tech resource that you need. There needs to be, do you have the commercial know-how skill set internally to stand up a sales team? Do you need to partner with the likes of a tech vendor such as a Criteo to do that sales piece as well? And if you don't have that scale, then do you have an incredibly viable proposition out there for advertisers? So an advertiser is going to need to understand, is there volume of traffic? Is there volume in sales that I want to be increasing and tapping into and increasing my market share against? Is the audience incredibly compelling and unique? And if those foundational elements aren't there, going down that path of retail media might not make sense at that moment. And the focus should be using your tech resources, investments around customer acquisition, retention, increasing that volume to then make yourself appealing to it. And when we think about retail media, it's really about that closed loop attribution for advertisers, being able to say, I'm a Samsung and I want to be able to reach shoppers at a Curry's and being able to track back the sales because I know people are buying TVs there and it's an incredible channel for me. Gap, made that decision, rightly so, to say, no, we're stopping this journey of commerce media because they didn't have any of those fundamental principles. They only have a single endemic site, Gap, in itself. So there's no third-party brands that are going to be able to access sales attribution to warrant investment there. And then non-endemic brands, the audience wasn't as large, valuable, or interesting for them to be activating against that when they can be activating against audiences at scale across a broader journey. So I think the question is not so much how do they stand something up when in the absence of scale, but knowing, is this the right moment for me to embark on this and it's going to be successful and not a distraction from my core business of being a retailer.
100% with you. And another hot topic, of course, is that as more and more retailers accumulate first-party data, I'm curious, what makes one retailer's data set more valuable than another's? And maybe speak a little on the importance of in-store behaviour metrics in this context too, because there's a lot of talk of next year on the online side of things and how the death of the cookie and how Google are phasing the cookie out. I'd love to find out more about the importance of in-store behaviour metrics in this context too.
I mean, that you've already hit the nail on the head in terms of what makes, a retailer's data compelling. And really the in-store data really stands out. Yeah. If you think about the power of an Amazon, that's their missing link. And yes, they've propped up a lot of their Amazon Goes and Amazon Fresh. And a lot of that is a data play to see in-store behavior. Yeah. And so the in-store value that presents itself for traditional retail is tremendous. And that makes them stand out versus an Amazon, which is the behemoth of retail media. And really kind of once a retailer can start ingesting that in-store and marrying it with their online data, both from an audience targeting perspective, that is a whole new ballgame for them in terms of their differentiator in the market. Understanding and being able to show that they can understand shoppers' in-store behavior. How does that compare to what happens online? How do they build that full holistic view of the shopper to target against with even more accuracy in terms of what is it that they want to buy and what are they going to engage with? And the key piece, though, for the retailers is how do they connect those dots? And, the easiest way often is having loyalty schemes, loyalty cards. You have the Tesco Club card. Asda's launched a fantastic new rewards program. So a lot of retailers are recognizing this and how they can tap into that and connect those dots between the two. And I think that's going to be the thing that stands out in the coming years as retailers are recognizing the power of their data. If we go back the last couple of years, when we talked about retail media, it was all about monetizing their on-site assets. The search placements, which would be activated through sponsored products, display, across the user journey on the retailer site. But this monetization of their audiences is that next stage. And the in-store data is going to be really what's compelling. And we're already seeing a lot of retailers out there starting to think about that and leverage that.
And you are right in the eye of the storm here, and you're having so many conversations with people in the industry, and there's probably a lot of trending conversations that you're having. So how do you approach crafting a more compelling media proposition for agencies, and what elements in your experience are just complete non-negotiables for them right off the bat?
That's something that's really key right now. And there's a lot of work being done in the market when it comes to standardization of retail media. Because previously, you had different technology companies standing up and supporting retailers when it comes to their retail media solutions. You had retailers doing their own standalone walled garden dynamic. And that means reporting is different, attribution is different, the windows in which sales are being attributed. And as this has scaled, and this is becoming such a meaningful part of an advertiser's marketing mix, the call to action when it comes to standardization is just now the table stakes. People need to be able to understand and compare and contrast performance across the different retailers, across the different retail media solutions, and really understand what they're looking at. And so I'd say that's a prerequisite right now. And one of the things that we're seeing is the access to self-service capabilities. So when you think about an agency, they're hands-on. They manage the activity for advertisers, for the clients themselves. And so their ability to actually deliver and control the campaigns is incredibly important. And that's been something that's been hard for some retailers to open up to. They're very protective of their data. And so, delivering a kind of self-service mechanism for advertisers to activate and manage activity is a departure from what they were used to when we go back to traditional trade activation. And so the other piece is transparency on data. So being able to access reporting in real time, being able to have API connections, all of this is just really the fundamentals of what agencies expect when it comes to activating media. And for retailers, it's part of that journey that they're on, because while they're growing to becoming meaningful media publishers, at the same time, they're retailers. And so they can't necessarily let the media business disrupt their retail business. But if they truly want to be tapping into agency budgets at scale, particularly from other channels, then they're going to have to start bringing to the table these prerequisites when it comes to transparency, self-service, access to data, and all of that.
And another big challenge for businesses is addressing fragmentation. And given the complex landscape, what would you say are the key strategies for integrating the retail media ecosystem coherently, especially within that broader advertising ecosystem? And again, just to bring to life what we're talking about here, what would be the ramifications of failing to do that stuff too?
Well, I think that the headline first is, if you're easy to buy, that's the first step. Yeah. And people will test and people will buy. And then if the performance is there, then they'll buy even more. And so not enabling that cohesive connection with the broader ad ecosystem, you're not easy to buy that. You have to go elsewhere. And so if you're a resource-strapped media agency that's trying to execute their single platforms across a wealth of different vendors and channels, then having to go into a separate platform or having to wait for reporting somewhere else, that's not easy to buy, and you can easily start falling off of media plans. So that's the first step is connecting into it, is the why behind it. So we've seen a strong movement in terms of advertising aggregators like a PackView or a Sky, connecting. We work with them. We have API connections with them. A lot of agencies use them to solve for this and being able to look at everything holistically. So, or we also work and have API connections for reporting. So it's just having the open mind on the retailer side to say, I understand the net goal to this. And so from a Criteo perspective, we're the largest retail network or platform out there, working with 200 retailers worldwide for retail media. And that capability enables that kind of ease to access and execution. But beyond that, it's even understanding, well, it's not just about us. It's those API connections that go into the likes of a PackView or into an agency's reporting dashboards or different elements like that. And so but the other challenge is making sure that you're not, as a retailer, risking your data or your assets. And so it's making sure, is it in a protected manner? Is it through a trusted partner and partnership? Or am I allowing access to my data that can potentially be commoditizing it? So there is a balance, and there is that moment to pause for retailers to know when is the right time to enable access and make it easy to execute versus I'm going to open up, the back door for anyone to access my data that can then be utilized in other efforts with which I might not be getting the revenue value that I'm looking for. So it's just making a pause to make sure that they're making the right decisions.
And before you came on the podcast today, I was doing a little research on you. And one of the things that stood out to me was how you emphasized the need to move away from a walled garden mentality. So can you elaborate on that and how standardization can actually potentially unlock greater value for advertisers and retailers alike?
Yeah. So I think there's some, we have Amazon, you have Walmart, that's a big garden, and they can have a massive party in that garden, and it's tremendous, but not every retailer has that scale. And so it goes back to that point. It's easy for someone to say, okay, Walmart's absolutely massive. Of course, I'm going to log into a separate entity to execute my media because Walmart is a huge entity in itself and the scale is tremendous. Not every retailer is going to have that scale. Even the ones that have great scale, it's still not at that same threshold to warrant that I'm going to be able to stand in this standalone walled garden, and people are going to want to seek out my garden And even though it's going to take time. So it's back to that earlier question, are you easy to buy? And so it's all interconnected to say, as a retailer, appropriately enable that access, whether it's through a Criteo or through other platforms or through those API connections, to make sure that people can access that garden and that it's not, a locked gate there, because it's going to have to be a really compelling opportunity for people to really want to knock down that gate and being able to activate at scale. And so it really is about, again, are you easy to buy is what it all boils down to.
And just to further bring to life everything we're talking about here, if we take a few UK-based retailers like Boots, Tesco, Sainsbury's, etc., how can they effectively leverage their loyalty programs in their media strategies? And do you think their approach could serve as a model for retailers in other markets too?
Yeah, I think there's great learnings, particularly as other markets begin seeing larger sophistication in both, whether it's the retail media or even e-commerce in itself. I think the UK retailers are doing a great job of really understanding the power of their data and those loyalty schemes. And so being able to understand who your shoppers are makes you able to execute media better. So when you build audiences, being able to understand that, I'm Nicole and the types of beauty products that I tend to buy. I can be highly valuable for a beauty brand wanting to target me based on, I tend to buy things at a higher price point. And so does that justify being able to warrant a higher CPM targeting for me? Would you want to, making sure how you reach me on the open internet as well, if they're leveraging their assets everywhere. And so knowing that audience, if you can make the media perform better, well, that means people are going to reinvest, and you can also warrant, premium pricing against it. And by understanding who the audience is and also understanding how they shop. So what people actually buy, that really indicates who they are. You can do great modeling and understanding that this person's bought baby products, but maybe they were buying a gift. Maybe it was a couple of one-offs. Maybe they just had like 5 friends that all had kids, and they happened to buy a ton of gifts over the last few months. But if you think about actual purchase behaviors are really taken into and say, okay, this person over the last 6 month period is buying nappies every week. Well, that's really indicative that they have a child that needs those nappies on a daily basis. And so now you can really model in terms of understanding in that media. It's not going to be the minimization of wasted impressions starts going down. And so the loyalty data, though, is really what solidifies that and really knows in terms of what that shopper is engaging with, particularly when it comes to promotions and different things, because it's going to really indicate in terms of what is happening in this moment in their life, what is it that they need, and what probably are they going to need tomorrow.
And I'm curious, as retail media continues to gain momentum, not just for the rest of this year, but 2024 and beyond, what are the skills that you think are crucial for managing these complex retailer relationships? And how do you assess that balance between technological investment and the requisite human expertise too? Because again, huge talking point right now.
Yeah, it's because again, as I mentioned earlier, yes, they're trying to stand up media programs, but they're also retailers, and that's a balance. And depending on the retailer, some of them are still in kind of a challenging point. When you roll out a retail media program, you have to be able to get, the tech team on side. They can have concerns around latency of the site, if, in terms of the putting more media on it. Customer experience can be also impacted. So how do you get everyone philosophically on board is the first step. And so having someone internally there that can really bring the entire business on side to really be able to ensure this is rolling out without, impediments that could be delayed, what can be great revenue opportunities. But a retailer is also going to need to understand what is it that brands need. Because there's a difference between understanding what a brand needs from a trade perspective as a retailer versus what a brand marketer is expecting when it comes to performance, when it comes to media execution. And from the vendor side, you need to understand this is the position that they're in, and how do you balance that, and how do you educate them, but also not sacrifice the notion that they are a retailer too, and there's going to be a balance. They're not going to be able to execute in the same way a traditional publisher can, because there's other considerations they have to take into play. But how do you help take them onto the journey to maximize the revenue output? How do you get them, and how do you support them in those business cases that may need to happen when it comes to rolling out more inventory on their site? And so we're starting to see a shift too with a lot of retailers bringing in-house, media experts, people that have worked at media agencies, people that have worked at traditional publishers, and people that have been at a brand, but on the marketing side. And so we're starting to see that investment into knowledge happening at the retailers, but it also has to be the understanding from the vendor side in terms of how do we support them, mutually recognizing where it is they're on their journey and where is it that they should be going within the next 6 months, next year, and how do we work with them on that roadmap for the future.
And just to further bring to life everything we've talked about today, if I was to ask you to look back at your experience launching, I think it was HookLogic's sponsored products across Europe, what were the key milestones that led to that significant growth and eventual acquisition too? Were there any lessons that today's retail media innovators might draw from that journey that you've been on?
Yeah, I would probably say patience. Yeah. I think patience is a key piece. I think when you're beginning a new proposition in the media market, it's a highly competitive market. There's a lot of solutions out there. And actually, if we isolate it to retail media, there's a lot of opportunities out there for investment when it comes to retail media. And when we launched HookLogic, typically when a retailer launches or integrates a new proposition, it starts slow. They're going to A/B test it. They're going to limit it to a certain percentage of the site. And that means really low volumes at times. And we had some early advertisers that were often frustrated that the volumes were so low. But then we had others that really got it. And they were like, this is going to be very interesting. The fact that I can now override the organic results of a key retailer and get my products top of shelf and being able to see the sales back, this is going to be huge. So I'm going to be patient. And those advertisers were the ones that were able to really learn quite quickly and continue to invest. And the retailers, while it was slow to see the revenue because of that technical standpoint, but also some of the brands that were like, call me when I want more volume, that can easily frustrate people that want that revenue return right away. When we still need to validate, we still need to test it, we still need to prove it out in the market and get people to open up their budgets to start spending there. And so I think patience is the key thing that we had to learn. And we were able to take a lot of those early innovators that said, hey, this is really interesting, start learning. And once that scale came, they were able to really kind of accelerate their investment quite quickly because they had that patience and were kind of really understanding the value to this. And so the retailers that were also patient on that were able to then start seeing the fruits of those efforts quite quickly. So I think it's understanding, kind of what is the expectations today, what could be blocking it, and how can we remove it quite quickly.
Well, it's been a huge honor having you on the podcast today. We covered so much in a short amount of time. And one final question I'd love to ask you here, because I think on behalf of everyone listening, we're all in this, or feeling the pressure of being in a state of continuous learning. And again, as someone that has achieved so much here, where or how do you self-educate? Any tips or advice that you can pass on to everyone listening?
I mean, I don't know if it's sound advice, but it's just kind of try to absorb as much as you can. I think we're pretty lucky in terms of the technology world we live in, the ability to listen to podcasts, whether it's through your commute. So I try to just expose myself to various different learnings. One of the things, just even thinking from a commercial standpoint, podcasts, I love This Is How I Built This is a great one to really see how entrepreneurs were able to address challenges and really craft and create highly successful businesses that started from nothing. And often, even though, I'm not an entrepreneur in terms of starting my own business, but often, we have new product solutions that we need to be putting out to the market that, has no traction. And how do we understand and foresee some of the challenges and roadblocks? So listening to stories like that, one, they're entertaining, because sometimes if you're just looking at dry material, you're going to get bored. So where can you find entertainment at the same time as learning? I think trying to read as much as you can, talking to other people, really asking questions and being inquisitive has really helped me. And I think that's just the key. Insatiable curiosity is really going to help anyone take themselves to the next level.
Completely agree with you. A great podcast recommendation there. And in 2,500 interviews, the word that keeps coming up is curious and curiosity. So 100% with you on that. And for anybody listening, maybe they want to find out more information about you, your team, find out more about anything we talked about today, carry on the conversation we've started. Where would you point everyone listening to find out more?
Well, I think if you can find me on LinkedIn, feel free to send me a message. Obviously, you can find via the Criteo website to find someone within your local market, be able to have contact details there. But yeah, happy to answer any questions that anyone has. If anyone has that curiosity they want satiated around retail media, happy to chat.
Well, as we said at the very beginning of our conversation today, retail media is a big buzzword right now in the advertising industry, and for good reason. And it was great how you demystified it today, put in a language everyone can understand, how it uses first-party retailer data to directly connect audiences with products and services, and so many golden tips throughout our conversation today. And just a big thank you for sitting down, Nicole, and taking the time to share your story with me today. Thank you. Wow, what an incisive conversation with Nicole there, dissecting the world of retail media, a space that is teeming with opportunities, yet fraught with complexities. From the need to build scale to the art of crafting a compelling media proposition and the urgency to address the issue of fragmentation. I think we've touched upon many of the facets there that could make or break a retail media venture, but I think it was Nicole's insights that emphasised that need for a more judicious investment in technology and skills, and for compellingly arguing there, dismantling that walled garden mentality and urging the industry to embrace standardization. But if you've got anything you'd like to add to the conversation today, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, just send me a DM or connect with me. Just look for @NeilC.Hughes, nice and easy to find there. Don't forget you can read my writing on Cyber News and Techopedia, and you can work with me at techblogwriter.co.uk. But that's it for today, so thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.